I never thought I could feel this close to someone. This moment, right here with you, is perfect.
Hey, my name is Caleb Morris. I'm 32 years old, and I haven't let anyone get close to me in 3 years. I tell people I just like my space. That's not exactly a lie, but it's not the truth either. The truth is simpler and uglier than that. 3 days before my wedding, Rachel sent me a text. Not a call, a text. 4 lines, no warning. Ending with, "I'm sorry, Caleb, I just can't." By the time I read it twice, the venue had already cashed my deposit, $3,000. Gone. For a reception hall in Lakewood I never walked into except to drop off chairs I rented. I spent the next 2 weeks calling vendors to cancel things one by one. Like taking apart something I'd built with my own hands, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the bill. After that I stopped trying. Not loudly. I didn't fall apart where anyone could see it. I just got quieter. I picked up more jobs through the electrical contracting company I work for, mostly residential rewiring and panel upgrades around the Denver Metro, Wash Park, Sloan's Lake, wherever the work was. I started keeping a 6 a.m. alarm even on Saturdays, because if I woke up early enough, there wasn't time to think about an empty side of the bed. I'd drive to a job site with coffee in a thermos that still had a dent from when I dropped it the morning of the wedding that never happened. Work first. Everything else later. Later never came. 8 months ago, the rent on my 2-bedroom in Capitol Hill got too heavy to carry alone. So I posted a listing on one of those roommate matching sites, the kind where you fill out a questionnaire about whether you're messy or clean, a morning person or a night owl. Leah Hale answered it within a day. She was 24, taught music at an elementary school in the district, and sang on weekends at a little coffee house 2 blocks from us that put a chalkboard sign out front every Friday. She moved in with 2 suitcases, a keyboard, and an acoustic guitar with a crack near the bridge that she swore still played fine. We weren't friends, not at first. We were 2 people splitting a water bill. But you learn things about someone living behind a thin Victorian-era wall. I learned she made coffee at 6:15, right after my alarm. She learned I tightened the kitchen faucet every other Sunday, because the building's plumbing was older than both of us combined. Somewhere in those small, unremarkable hours, the apartment stopped feeling like a place I was just renting a room in. Last Thursday, I was walking down the hall with her screwdriver in my hand, the one she'd borrowed to fix a loose outlet cover and never returned. Her door was open maybe 6 inches. I figured she was out. I knocked once out of habit, didn't wait, and pushed it open to set the screwdriver on her dresser. She was standing in front of the mirror in a blue dress, only one strap on, the zipper half done up her back. I turned around so fast I nearly took the door off its hinge with my shoulder. Sorry. I thought you were at work," I said to the hallway wall, my voice too loud for an apartment with paper-thin walls. There was a beat of silence behind me. Then fabric moving, a zipper sliding the rest of the way up, the door opened again. Leah stood there fully dressed now, arms crossed, not angry the way I expected. She just looked tired and a little nervous in a way I hadn't seen on her before. "Actually," she said, "I need your help." I followed her into the kitchen, because the living room felt too small for whatever this was going to be. She filled the kettle, didn't turn it on, just held it under the tap longer than it needed. "My sister's getting engaged officially this weekend," she said. "Maya. There's a dinner Saturday night, a private room at a restaurant downtown. Small, like 20 people, family and a few friends." She set the kettle down. "My mom invited Adrian." I didn't know the name yet, but I knew the tone. The same flat, careful tone people use when they're naming something that still has teeth. "Adrian," I said. "My ex. 2 years on and off, mostly on." She leaned against the counter, arms crossed over her stomach like she was holding herself together at the seams. "My mom still thinks he's the best almost son-in-law she ever had. She doesn't know why we ended things. Nobody in my family does, not really. I just told them it didn't work out. And you don't want to walk in there, alone. I don't want to walk in there and have my mother ask him to sit next to me," she said. "I don't want to spend the whole night watching her hope We'll get back together, while he tells everyone how well he's doing. She finally looked at me straight on. I need a date. Someone who can sit there and make it obvious I'm not available. I know it's a lot to ask. I should have said no. I had every reason to. I don't do favors that involve pretending things are real. Not since pretending cost me $3,000, and a marriage that existed for exactly 4 months before it didn't. Okay, I said instead. She blinked like she hadn't expected that to be the easy part. Okay? 1 dinner. I can do 1 dinner. She let out a breath that had probably been sitting in her chest since she opened that door. Thank you. I mean it. I didn't think much more about it until 2 nights later when she showed me a photo on her phone. A guy from some old Instagram post tagged at a downtown happy hour. Sandy hair, gray blazer, the kind of smile that's aimed at a camera instead of a person. Adrian Voss. Something in my stomach turned over slow, like a wrench catching on a stripped bolt. Voss, I said. Does he live off Spear? Big remodel on a place near the park, finished maybe 2 years ago? Leah frowned. How do you know that? Because my crew rewired that house. I sat back. Full panel upgrade, new circuits for the kitchen, recessed lighting through the whole first floor. Took us 3 weeks. I remembered it clearer now, the open floor plan, the marble island he kept telling us not to scratch. He stiffed us $1,200 on the final invoice. Said the work was substandard, even though it passed city inspection the same week. My boss ate the loss, because chasing it through small claims would have cost more than the bill. Leah's mouth had gone tight. That sounds exactly like him. He does that. Decides something isn't good enough right when it's time to pay for it. He never knew my name, I said. I was just one guy on a 4-man crew. He probably doesn't remember my face. Good, she said. Let's keep it that way until I decide if I want him to. We spent the next few nights at the kitchen table building a story, like 2 contractors going over a blueprint before the real work started. We needed a timeline that wouldn't crack under casual questions. So we didn't invent one. We just bent the truth we already had. The day we moved in together became the day we started dating, 8 months back, a Tuesday in October, because Leah said nobody questions a Tuesday. Our first date became the coffee house 2 blocks over, the one with the chalkboard sign, where she actually does sing on Fridays. I just had to remember to call it our place now, not her gig. What's our story for why nobody at home knows about us yet? She asked, pen tapping a notepad like she was grading a quiz. We were just being private, I said. People do that. People who actually like each other, you mean? I didn't have a fast answer for that, so I didn't give one. Somewhere in the middle of memorizing fake anniversaries, the favor started costing both of us something real, just not money this time. Wednesday, the kitchen faucet started dripping again. Worse than usual, a steady tap against the steel sink that I could hear from my room at night. I got under the cabinet with a flashlight in my teeth and a basin catching the water, and by the time I came up for air, there was a smell of garlic and butter filling the apartment. You don't have to do that, I said, nodding at the stove. I know, Leah said, the same 2 words she always used, like she'd practiced not needing permission. You fixed my faucet. I'm not letting you eat cereal for dinner after that. She made chicken piccata, the real kind, with capers and a sauce she reduced twice because the first batch wasn't right. We ate at the same table where we'd built a fake relationship 2 nights earlier, and for 40 minutes neither of us mentioned Adrian or Saturday or any of it. She told me about a 3rd grader who'd cried during a recorder lesson because he was convinced he was the worst musician alive, and how she'd spent 20 minutes after school proving him wrong on a borrowed xylophone. I told her about a panel I'd replaced that morning in a 100-year-old house in Berkeley, where the wiring was so old it was wrapped in cloth instead of plastic. Later that night, her guitar came out, the one with the crack near the bridge. She handed it to me without asking, which told me she already knew I could play. E-string's been buzzing for a month, she said. I keep meaning to deal with it. I turned the tuning peg slow, listened, adjusted the saddle a ½ millimeter, the kind of small fix that takes 10 minutes if you know what you're listening for. When I handed it back, she strummed once, and her whole face changed, surprised in a way that made me feel useful in a way wiring a panel never quite did. "Where'd you learn guitar?" "My dad," I said, before he left. "It's about the only thing he taught me that stuck." She didn't push on that, just nodded, like she understood there were doors you only open partway. Friday night, the night before the dinner, we stood in front of the bathroom mirror, because Leah insisted we needed to practice looking like a couple, which mostly meant practicing not looking stiff next to each other. "Put your arm around me," she said, like she was issuing a work order. I did. It felt like nothing for about 3 seconds, and then it didn't feel like nothing at all. "Okay, now look at me like you actually like me," she said, half laughing. I looked at her in the mirror. She stopped laughing. Neither of us said anything for a second too long. "This is for practice," she said quietly, more to herself than to me. "Right," I said. "Practice." We broke apart at the same time, both too fast. Like two people backing away from a live wire we just realized wasn't grounded. That was the night I finally told her about Rachel, the whole thing, not just the headline. The 4-line text, the deposit, the 2 weeks of phone calls canceling florists, and a string quartet I never even heard play. I told her I hadn't let myself want anything that could be taken back since then, which is maybe the most honest sentence I'd said out loud in 3 years. Leah was quiet for a while after that. Then she told me about Adrian, not the highlight reel, the real shape of it. 2 years of him telling her, in that calm, reasonable voice some men use like a tool, that the coffeehouse gig was cute but not a career, that the bigger rooms downtown wouldn't want her, that she should be grateful anyone wanted to hear her sing at all. She said there'd been an opening for a real listening room on Colfax, paid, a chance to build an actual following, and Adrian had talked her out of even auditioning. Told her she wasn't ready. She believed him for a year longer than she should have. "I used to think he was protecting me from disappointment," she said, staring at her hands. "It took me a long time to figure out he just didn't want me to find out. I didn't need him. I didn't say anything wise. I just sat with her in the kitchen until the silence stopped feeling like something either of us needed to fill. And for the first time since Rachel's text, the quiet in that apartment didn't feel like something trying to swallow me whole. It felt like something I was sharing with someone else. The night before the engagement dinner, the Bennett family did what I'm told they always do before anything important. They ate together early, at Diane's house in Park Hill, a brick 2-story with a porch light that had been left on so long it had a moth problem. I wore the only blazer I owned that didn't smell like a job site, and I checked my reflection in the truck window twice before I made it to the door, which was twice more than I'd checked anything about myself in 3 years. Adrian got there before us. I knew him the second he opened the door like it was his own house, because some men carry a room the same way whether they're standing in a kitchen or standing over an invoice they're refusing to pay. Same sandy hair, combed now instead of styled for a camera. Same gray blazer, or one just like it. He shook my hand with exactly the right amount of pressure, the kind men use when they want you to know they could use more. "Caleb, right?" he said, "Leah's friend." "Boyfriend," Leah said before I had to decide which word to use. Adrian's smile didn't move, but something behind it adjusted like a thermostat clicking over. "Right, of course." He looked me over, slow, landing on my hands, which still had a faint line of grease under one nail no amount of scrubbing ever fully lifts. "An electrician. That's sturdy work." He said it the way you'd compliment a folding chair. Functional. Forgettable. I'd heard that tone before, standing in a marble kitchen 2 years ago, while a man in a similar blazer told my boss the wiring wasn't worth $1,200. I just nodded. Keeps the lights on. Dinner was loud in the way families are loud when they're trying not to talk about the thing actually sitting at the table. Maya glowed every time someone mentioned Tyler. Diane refilled wine glasses, like it was a job she'd been training for her whole life. And at some point, somewhere between the salad and the entree, she set her glass down and looked at Adrian with the kind of warmth she hadn't aimed at me once all night. Adrian always knew how to dress for these things, she said, to the table, but really to Leah. Remember the gala 2 years ago? He looked like he belonged on a magazine cover. Her eyes flicked to me, to the blazer I'd ironed myself an hour ago, and something in her expression didn't quite finish the sentence she was clearly thinking. Leah went very still beside me. I felt it more than saw it, the way her fork stopped halfway to her plate. "Mom," Maya said quietly, a warning wrapped in a single word. Diane laughed it off, said she didn't mean anything by it, and moved on to asking Adrian about his job, his car, his 5-year plan. Like she was running a credit check disguised as conversation. Leah didn't say anything. She just picked her fork back up and finished her food in small, careful bites, the kind you take when you're concentrating very hard on not feeling something in front of an audience. Later, in the hallway by the bathroom, Maya pulled Leah aside. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but the house had thin walls too, like ours. "Tyler's friend Bryce was here for 5 minutes, Maya whispered. "He recognized Caleb. Said he met him at your apartment in March, picking up a package. He told Tyler, Caleb's just your roommate, isn't he? He didn't say anything else?" Leah's voice had an edge of panic in it she was trying to flatten out. "Not yet. But Bryce will be at the dinner tomorrow." I stood in the kitchen doorway pretending to look for water, and felt the floor tilt a half-degree, the way it does right before a fuse blows, somewhere in a wall you can't see yet. The dinner itself was held the next night in a private room at a restaurant downtown, the kind with low lighting and a long table, set for 20 white cloth. Candles that had clearly been lit by someone other than the people sitting near them. I kept my hand near the small of Leah's back the whole time we walked in, not for show, just because it felt like the kind of thing you do for someone whose hands are cold. Bryce was already there, 2 seats down, watching me a beat too long every time I spoke. Leah noticed too. I felt her shoulder tense against my arm. Adrian found his moment somewhere around the toasts, holding his wine like a microphone he'd been waiting all night to pick up. "Leah's always had a beautiful voice," he said. Loud enough for the table. Eyes on her, not on Maya, not on the engagement they were supposedly there to celebrate. "I used to tell her, you don't need the big rooms, the spotlight, all that pressure. Some voices are made for something smaller, cozier." He smiled like he'd just paid her a compliment. "I guess some people just end up needing a little more support than others to feel secure. No shame in that." The table went quiet in that particular way. Rooms go quiet when everyone understands exactly what was just said, and nobody wants to be the one to say it out loud. I felt Leah's hand find mine under the table, not for comfort, for steadiness, the way you grip a ladder before you decide whether to climb it. I stood up instead. "Leah doesn't need anyone to make her feel small so she can feel important," I said. My voice didn't shake. I'd spent 3 years learning how to sound calm while something in my chest was anything but. "She sings because she's good, not because anyone gave her permission to." Adrian's smile thinned out at the edges. "I was just being honest." "Then be honest with me," I said. "You've got something to say about her. Say it to me." Not across a table where she can't say it back without making a scene at her sister's engagement. The room had gone fully silent now. Even the waiter near the door had stopped moving. Diane's mouth was open, like she wanted to smooth this over and didn't know which direction to smooth it in. Maya was staring at Adrian like she was seeing him for the first time in years. Adrian looked at me, really looked, the way you study something you're trying to place. I watched the moment land, slow, like a breaker finally tripping. His eyes flicked to my hands again, the same grease line, the same sturdy work he'd dismissed an hour ago, and something behind his expression shifted from smug to almost uncertain. "Have we met?" he said. "Before tonight, I mean." I held his gaze. I didn't say where. Not yet. But I watched him search for it, watched the math start running somewhere behind his eyes, and for the first time all night, Adrian Voss didn't have a quick, easy thing to say. Adrian didn't sit down. He laughed instead, a short, dry sound with no real humor in it, the kind men use to cover the half-second where they've lost their footing. "Relax," he said, looking around the table like he was inviting everyone to agree with him. "I'm just saying what I always told her. You don't need the spotlight, Leah. You get overwhelmed easy. Remember the showcase in Cherry Creek? You backed out 2 days before because you convinced yourself you weren't ready." He shrugged, easy, like he was being generous. I just helped her see what she could actually handle. He didn't even seem to notice. He was repeating himself, word for word. The same script he'd used on her for 2 years, now performed live in front of her entire family. Like a magic trick that had stopped working the moment someone turned on the lights. I watched something settle in Leah's spine. Not anger exactly, steadier than that. "You didn't help me see anything," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the way a struck tuning fork carries, clean and impossible to ignore. "You called the venue for me before I'd even decided. You told them I'd changed my mind. I found out a week later when I called to ask about the date, and they said I'd already canceled." Diane's wine glass stopped halfway to her mouth. "That's not what happened," Adrian said. "I still have the email," Leah said. "From the booking manager, confirming the cancellation you made from my account, on my laptop, while I was in the shower." She turned slightly, not toward him now, toward the table, toward her mother. "He had the password to our shared savings because he said it made things easier when we split rent. After we broke up, $200 I'd put aside for a recording session was just gone. He said he borrowed it because I wasn't going to use it productively anyway." Nobody at the table moved. Maya's hand had gone flat against the white tablecloth, like she needed something solid to hold on to. "For 2 years, Leah said, and her voice cracked once, just once, then held. "I thought I wasn't good enough for anything bigger than a coffee house on a Friday night. I thought that was just me being realistic. It took me a long time to figure out it wasn't realism. It was him telling me that often enough that I started saying it to myself before he even had to." Adrian opened his mouth. Nothing useful came out of it. Leah turned to me. Her hand was still in mine under the table, and now she lifted it into the open, onto the white cloth, in front of everyone, like she wasn't hiding anything anymore because there was nothing left worth hiding. "Caleb isn't pretending," she said. "He's the first person who's actually listened to me in 2 years. I'd spent 3 years being careful with every word I let out into a room. The same way I'd learned to be careful around a live panel. Because the last time I trusted something fully, it had cost me $3,000. And whatever was left of my ability to believe in good timing. But sitting there, with her hand in mine and 20 people watching, and Adrian Voss still searching his memory for where exactly he'd seen my face before, being careful didn't feel like the smart thing to do anymore. It just felt like the old habit it always was." "She's right," I said. "I wasn't supposed to feel anything real tonight. I do." I leaned over, slow enough that she could have stopped me, and she didn't. The kiss wasn't for an audience. I'd forgotten the audience was even there. The candles, the silverware. Bryce 2 seats down with his mouth slightly open. There was just the smell of her shampoo and the warmth of her hand still locked with mine on the table. And somewhere underneath all of it, 3 years of careful finally going quiet. When we broke apart, Diane was staring at us both with an expression I hadn't seen on her face all night. Somewhere between shock and something closer to shame. "I didn't know," she said quietly, to Leah, to the whole table, to herself maybe. "Any of it. I just thought." She stopped, pressed her napkin to her mouth for a second. "I thought he was good for you because he looked like he was." Adrian stood up. Nobody asked him to. Nobody asked him to stay either. He looked around the table once, at Maya, who wouldn't meet his eyes, at Diane, who'd already turned her chair half toward her daughter, at me last, longest, like he was still trying to place the grease line under my nails, and the 3 weeks his marble kitchen took to rewire. He didn't say anything else. He picked up his jacket from the back of his chair and walked out through the private room's heavy door, and it closed behind him with a soft, expensive click, the kind of sound money makes when it's leaving a room nobody's chasing it out of. After the dinner wound down, after Maya hugged Leah twice, And Tyler shook my hand with a grip that said he'd heard every word. Diane found us by the coat check. She didn't say much at first, just reached out and held both of Leah's hands in hers. "I'm sorry," she said. "I spent 2 years comparing the wrong man to the right one, and I didn't even know I was doing it." Leah's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "You believed what he showed you. That's what he was good at." Diane nodded slowly, like she was filing that away somewhere it would actually stay this time. Then she looked at me just for a second, just long enough to say, "Thank you for not letting her go through that alone." And I understood it wasn't really about the dinner. It never had been. 3 months after that dinner, I filed the paperwork to start my own electrical contracting business. Just me and 2 guys I trusted, a used van with new lettering on the side, and a license framed on the wall of an office that used to be a storage closet. I still remember signing my name on the state application and thinking about the marble kitchen on Spear Boulevard, the $1,200 that never came, and how strange it was that the same hands that got stiffed on that job were now the ones putting my name on a door. Leah got the Friday slot at the listening room on Colfax, the one Adrian had talked her out of auditioning for 2 years earlier. Paid, real, her name on a small printed card taped to the window. She still teaches music during the day, still hums scales while she does dishes, but every Friday night now she sings to a room that chose to be there. And slowly, one paycheck at a time, she's been chipping away at the student loans she used to talk about, in a voice that sounded like an apology. Diane started inviting me to dinner the way you invite someone who already belongs there, not someone being evaluated. No more comparisons, no more magazine covers. Just an extra plate set out before I even confirmed I was coming, and a woman who'd learned, late but for real, what it cost a daughter when you mistake polish for character. One night in late spring, the windows open, the smell of rain still hanging over Capitol Hill from a storm that had passed an hour earlier, I was sitting on the couch with her guitar across my knees, restringing it for the 2nd time that year. Leah was curled up on the other end with her feet in my lap, half asleep, half pretending she wasn't. "I think it's time Wes stopped splitting the lease like roommates," I said. She opened one eye. "We haven't been roommates in months, Caleb." "I know," I said. "I want to make it official. 1 room. No more guest room nobody sleeps in just because the paperwork says we're not really together." She sat up slow, studying me the way she used to study sheet music she hadn't decided whether she liked yet. Then she smiled. The real one. The one that used to only come out on Fridays under string lights. "Took you long enough," she said. "I think about that night sometimes, the night this whole thing started. A screwdriver in my hand and a door I thought was empty. Sometimes the truth doesn't come through some grand confession, some perfect speech rehearsed in front of a mirror. Sometimes it just walks out of a half-open door, looks you straight in the eye and says, 'I need your help.' And that's where everything real begins." Thanks for listening to our story.
I think I'm
This has been
falling
Amore Stories.
completely in love with you.